you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone to come this afternoon. We are starting the session, Journalism or Public Interest Information, ? The Funders' Next Frontier. This is a debate about what funders are looking for and how they want to finance your projects, and the difference between journalism and public interest information and why we discuss this will be explained by a member of the panel, or maybe all members of the panel. We have here on the panel 4 representatives of funders. So I start on my left. Katharina Thomas is Chief Operating Officer of the Allianz Foundation. Allianz, big German insurance, I think probably the biggest insurance in Europe. This foundation sits in Berlin and gives between 5 and 7 million a year for good purposes. On the right, outside, we have Patrick Schneider, Chief Operating Strategy Officer of the Media Development Investment Fund, which has 150 million euros invested in media enterprises, and which is registered in the Netherlands and in the United States. Also on the right, Kirsti Loken-Stavrum, CEO of Tinius Trust from Norway, a very big media company. And on my left, Maribel Königer, Director Journalism and Media of the Erste Foundation. Erste is a savings bank from Austria, which works in Central and Eastern Europe and gives 17 million, I understood, euros a year in this region, east of Austria. So, first question therefore, what do you fund and what are the strings attached? Let's start with, the 17 million a year. Let's start with Maribel Königer, please.
Wow, this sounds like this wheel, you know, the lottery.
You won.
Yeah, I won. Thank you. No, I think in the first step, we wanted a bit to explain where our funding model comes from, or what is behind our but quite different models than in funding. So Savings Banks Foundation, what does this mean? I don't want to go too much in details, but fact is indeed this foundation owns a bank, so it's not founded and funded by a bank, but we get dividends from a core share that we have for historic reasons, because Erste first was the first savings bank in Austria 200 years ago, and as this is now the biggest retail financial service provider in Central and Eastern Europe, we spend also this money there. Why do we do this also for media? And the number that you heard is unfortunately not the support of the media sector. It's the overall budget that we have at the moment, and banks are earning good money at the moment, so we are slowly always now increasing our budget, which is good. But we had various investment or funding cases for the foundation, focus areas from social, arts, and others. And but from the very beginning, it was clear that we want to invest in the democracies in this region that were, at least when we started over 20 years ago, still young democracies, not so stable democracies. If they are now more stable, you can question it. Even Austria, we don't know if it is that stable anymore. We always found that investing in democracy means that well-informed citizens, this is the usual phrase about it, should be the basis of functioning democracies and good choices in elections. And so good information in the public space, and here we are already at this maybe differences, is important. And maybe a last sentence, and then I pass the word is, at the very beginning, we only invested in capacity building for journalists on the Balkans, super specific, but we thought on one hand 20 years ago, Balkans is an important region where we have to do something because they are not yet members of the European Union. European Union is a safe space. Everything is okay, fine. Hungary, what should happen? Poland, what should happen? And also we didn't want to touch media funding because we thought there is a conflict of interest maybe and reputation risks, etc. More about that later, but we started in journalism capacity building, if you want to. But this changed then afterwards. But maybe I can tell you more about it in another round.
Okay, thank you very much. Patrice, 150 million euros invested in media. I think the headline comes from you, journalism or public interest information. What are you doing? Are you changing your focus?
Thank you, Paul. So first of all, I need just to give you a context for people who have just discovered about MDIF. So Media Development Investment Fund is a 30 years old 501c3 nonprofit, which 30 years ago decided that independent media, one of the way of helping it was basically to provide affordable capital and a massive amount of capacity building 30 years ago. I was trying, as you changed the questions, I was trying to find the answer to how much we've spent. I'm looking to our CEO, Arlen Mandel, something like 50 million of capacity building value over the course of these 30 years. We've deployed with the financing. So it's really a double model. We consider ourselves a combination of a human rights organization and an investment fund. If that sounds strange, it is, and absolutely fascinating for 30 years. So the human rights part is the right to have access to the most independent and unfettered information. It's a right, it's a human right, but also using as a nonprofit the tools of the financial world. The people we help go from Guatemala, El Periódico, sadly was shut down, and now José Rubén is in prison. His son is here, by the way, to Maria Ressa, Nobel Prize winner in the Philippines, and everything in the middle in terms of. So we try to use the investment model, and we've deployed 325 million over these 30 years, and now currently our portfolio is around 150. What does that mean? It means that currently MDIF has 150 million dollars invested in some 49 companies. I think it's somewhere around 40 companies that are the real change agents in the country where they live. Now, to answer your question, we've been doing for 30 years basically the legacy media, print, radio, and broadcast. But about 11 years ago, we decided that we took journalism out of our mission statement. The reason is that we saw immediately 15 years ago that we wouldn't be helping print, radio, TV, and online, actually. But there was a new generation of actors in the market who already, right after the digital news outlets, were coming and providing public interest information. And for us at MDIF, our mission being to provide news information and public debate, it forced us to really think a little bit outside. So in a second round of questions, I'm telling you that was what we've been doing for 11 years, continuing to fund news media organization, but increasingly looking a little bit broader in terms of who was providing public interest information. Monsieur Nemitz?
Thank you, Patrice. I think that's a great start. So Kirsti Loken-Stavrum, a Norwegian media company you are representing. What is your public interest contribution beyond being a great media company which seeks the truth?
The trust that I'm head of is owning Schibsted Media. That is a huge Scandinavian media group. We have the biggest commercial media brands in Norway and Sweden. Just recently moved to buy TV4 in Sweden and MTV in Finland. That are the two biggest commercial TV stations in Sweden and Finland. So the purpose of the trust is to ensure that Schibsted is developed so that we can make journalism contribute to democracy, freedom of speech, and we think you do that through independent journalism and quality journalism. Those are the two most important stuff for us. And a trust always has the perspective of perpetuity, which is quite challenging when you're into media business these days. So for us as a trust, the tricky question, of course, will be what is trusted information? How to sort of invest in future trusted information so that we will be able to live up to our purpose. But I think part of why I'm here is that I'm a member of the board of Pluralis. That is a fund raised by the Initiative on Media Development Investment Fund. And we moved to buy shares in media outlets in Eastern and Central Europe to avoid capture. And that is, I think, also very interesting in the perspective that Patrice just said, because we of course think of trusted information as journalism, but these days it's almost 20 years since smartphone came. We have lived a generation with social media. I think we have to realize that there are a lot of people out there, also among ourselves, even though we are a group of fans of journalism, that consume information in very different ways. So when we have this pluralis buying up media outlets, it's always tricky to know, are we saving a bankrupt company or are we investing in a future that will uphold democracy? And I think that is what we're going to discuss.
Thank you very much, and let me move to Katharina Thomas of the Allianz Foundation. You're giving between 5 and 7 million a year. Tell us a little bit what you do in the media sector, in the public space for democracy.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. So Allianz Foundation is sitting at this table as the newbie. We have started to venture into the field of journalism and media about 2 years ago when we established the Allianz Foundation as it is today. But this builds on a longer legacy that the previous Allianz Cultural Foundation already had. So for the past 20 years, the Allianz Cultural Foundation had been working in the field of open and democratic societies, working with organizations who fight for freedom of opinion, freedom of the arts, and against shrinking civic space in Europe, because one of the central challenges that we've seen for a while now is the societal fragmentation and the polarization in European societies. And when we set up the Allianz Foundation 2 years ago and its new strategy, it was only natural, really, to look at journalism and media as something that has become more and more crucial when you think about what is essential for resilient democracies. And so one of our focus areas, or one of our objectives, is you spoke about trust, that trust in public discourse is restored. I was talking to Professor Petra Schleiter a couple of days ago, who leads the Center for Democratic Resilience at Oxford University, and she was speaking about how we no longer share the same epistemic space. And what she means by that is that the fundamental core value underpinning traditional journalism, which is the value of truth, is being questioned. People are no longer sure or no longer share the same understanding that truth is the fundamental value of information. And so this is something that I think is crucial for funders to address if you want to foster resilient and democratic societies.
Okay, so we have a spectrum here. On the one hand, financing of legacy media and good content producers who produce reliable content for democracy. But the interesting thing about this festival, it's called Journalism Festival, also the complete team of tech freaks who created Mastodon, the alternative decentralized network for social media, content play out, videos and so on, is here. And of course, the medium being the message, and all of us knowing that the capitalistic societies of the algorithmic age, Facebook, YouTube and so on, determining the content which we see, so creating alternatives to this type of play out to these algorithms, to these networks, in the form of Mastodon, for example. On this continuum between content production, journalism, legacy media on the one hand, and at the other end, the people who push forward a decentralized tech network like Mastodon, right now in Germany, supported by the Safe Social campaign, which gained before the German elections recently very quickly 250,000 signatures. Where do you stand, and why would you or would you not invest in the part of this continuum which you can choose? Let's say only technology network, Mastodon on the one hand, or a legacy media on the other hand. Maybe Patrice or Kirsti, do you want to start?
Say you first.
Dear Paul, as everything in reality in life, the reality is really in the middle, I think. I would say at the extreme, I would put beyond Mastodon, I would put probably the big techs who have played a role in terms of the public discourse. So I think your continuum, I would add to that. So.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're not going to invest in big tech. So that's why I want you to start with Mastodon, and the other end is content. Tech network, a new alternative, decentralized, hopefully democratic tech network, not in the hands of big capitalism and the stock exchange, versus legacy media and journalism. Where do you stand on this? Why would you invest in one and not in the other? Or do you invest in all of this?
First of all, it's important to say that when you say the word invest to MDIF, I repeat, we are truly on the sword, which means we do not invest if there's not a mission part involved. It's impossible. To get into MDIF's investment system, you have to show carte blanche about what is your role in society, what has been a role. Now, our prism out to date has been legacy media, meaning that we look at what you've been doing. We work in these 49 countries. And of course, legacy media is one prism of looking. But let me answer through a very concrete case. About 10 years ago, we came across a small organization in Brazil, Sao Paulo, only the region, the province of Sao Paulo, young people doing an application, a pothole application. For those familiar, it's basically an application that says if there's a pothole now functioning in your neighborhood, if a kindergarten is trying to ask you for a commission to get your child, if one of the signs prevents the old people to go, you can literally point this out. And we said, okay, interesting pothole. It provides a service to society. It is technology. But what's your business model? And they said, oh, it's very simple. They said, if you're the government, so now they're at 1 million, Collaborate is called. There are 1 million users. And they say, oh, if you're the government, you have to pay to get in. It's anonymous. You don't know who will, but you get all the information of what's happening if you're an agency and so forth. Not one journalist is on the team. Not one. Now, who used to provide this service before? When you had a problem in your communities of that type, you would go to the authority, to the public, to the place where a newspaper or a radio, and say you would disclose that. So I think, I can't answer your question about the spectrum, but I think it's more about switching, as I always like to do with you, Paul, is switching the prism, is saying it's not necessarily about the technology spectrum from legacy to high Mastodon technology or only technology, but it's more about what has been the function of journalism for the past 200 years, depending if you're Sweden or if you're French. It's a Camille Desmoulins or it's the oldest newspaper in Sweden. But what has been the function of that makes, I would argue, our prism move? Where's the service, where's the function that journalism has been providing? Good answer? Or?
Well, let's see what the others are saying.
Well, I stopped before when, actually 10 years ago, when I said we were investing in journalism but stayed away from media. But in the meantime, I'm together with Kirsti in Pluralis at the board, so we do a lot of things now. And I come to your tech question. But before I have to say that as the Savings Banks Foundation that we are in Austria, we are only allowed to fund non-profits. So classical foundation work, which makes it very difficult to invest in some media, for example, because they hopefully are for profit or should be. But we found a way to nevertheless support media that should be actually profitable. The better the more profitable the better, I would say, that are pooled funds. So for us is the blended capital fund of Pluralis one way to invest even in legacy media, which is something really interesting for a foundation like ours, and we can do this because social impact investing is allowed in our statutes. But we also are part of the Media Forward Fund, who was on several panels already today. So that's something where we want to improve or help media improve their business models to become sustainable in the end, because in my opinion, no philanthropic money in the world can pay all the public news that we would need. So there has to be an interesting resource model. And another one is Media Forward Fund, I forgot to say, for those who are not in all these other panels, is a fund for media who want to scale and improve their businesses in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And as we are in this CEE region, we, at the very beginning, our first pooled fund was Civitatis, and Civitatis has 3 sub-funds. One is public interest media, so that's where we are, and one is tech and democracy. So, but this is not, Civitatis is not investing directly in Mastodon or so, but they try to support organizations who help to protect civic rights towards big tech and others, and to create a safe, clean, weird word, but a good space for the use of artificial intelligence and everything that comes with it, the tech companies. So this is where we are more or less engaged. Besides the fact that we have founded a startup for digital solutions for social problems, but that is not our media and journalism department. So this is something completely different. So no, Mastodon, I have to say, sorry, no sorry.
Kirsti.
Well, I may add a little, one sentence in our purpose in the trust then is that we should also, apart from owning Schibsted, we shall, when needed, support projects that are important to build central framework conditions for the free press. Like these days we have sued the Norwegian government for the surveillance laws because we think they're not in compliance with the national laws or the European laws, and so we are testing that in court these days. But things that are happening in the US, of course, makes us rethink a lot of things. And tech obviously is on the table and should be for all countries that are not US, because I think we've been sleeping when it comes to ensuring tech infrastructure, both as part of the infrastructure for free media, but also as a security policy. And in that perspective, I think that there will need to be investments in tech infrastructure that are much more national and democracy compliant as well. I think definitely that we or all have to dive into that.
Katharina, Allianz.
So there are 2 points here for us from my point of view. The first point is that as we are still new in the field, we're still in a phase where we are exploring a lot of things. So we are also working with the MDIF and are providing some grant money as a de-risking mechanism in this blended finance instrument. And we do this because for us this is a systemic approach and it enables us to leverage our funds and do much more with them in the end, have a much greater impact than we could as an individual foundation, and to foster sustainable business models in journalism and media through this instrument. On the other hand, we also fund individual grants projects. We usually publish an open call once a year, and there the focus is very much on investigative journalism, very local, and we use this specifically to explore and to find out what's out there in the world. Having said that, we also probably wouldn't invest in Mastodon because, like in Austria and Germany, the tax code regulates what is considered as the public good, and you can only fund non-governmental organizations. But I think this question that you're asking of whether are funders looking for to fund new forms of journalism is very interesting. From my point of view, I want to learn what's out there because I think the sector is in constant development and innovation, and a lot of things are happening out there, and I want to find out what is happening and then see how we as a foundation should maybe adapt our funding strategies. Instead of saying, okay, now we're looking to fund this type of journalism, please send us proposals that match those criteria. I do not want to make that kind of prescription. I'd rather enter into conversations and find out what people are already doing in the field.
So, okay, people have projects, they have good ideas. Do they already have to be a legal person? Do they have to have a business and a business model which may be struggling, maybe under pressure from a government? Or can people come to you with a really new and a fresh idea, just with a great CV and say, hey, you know, give me some startup money, I have something good to try? Maybe I start on this side again.
Okay. Actually, nobody can come directly to us from the media area because we do not directly fund media. We have really the pooled fund concept. And also there, to give the example with the Media Forward Fund, but the same is actually with Civitatis, you have to be an organization, especially for the Media Forward Fund. The idea behind is to develop you within 2 years further. So you have to be an entity that can be somehow developed and has a business model that should be funded. Same with Civitatis. Pluralis is a completely different situation because there has to be an entity that has to be invested in, but Patrice can explain this much better. But on the other hand, what we sometimes can give is advices but most people who come to us tried already other paths, so that advice is then very often not necessary anymore. But in Vienna, for example, there is indeed public money from the city of Vienna or an entity of the city of Vienna. If you have a startup and want to start a new medium, you can apply, and if you have a good idea, it's very likely that you get seed money. But then the question is what happens then after 1 year when the seed money is over, and that, for example, the Media Forward Fund is then to bridge this. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I would say this is our reaction then.
Yes.
We are supporting a few initiatives that are journalistic like Forbidden Stories that many of you will know. But we're also looking into these days a project that is empowering youths in the outskirts of one of the big cities to empower them to be trusted content producers. And I think when we're talking about trust, if that sort of is the diamond in this value chain, I think we need to understand that trust is a very mixed concept when relevance is a huge part of it, and to a lot of people, journalism obviously doesn't feel that relevant as we would hope it should, and that's why I think we need to invest in different sources of information production, and also understand that influencers are part of that. So I think as a sort of media owner and media entrepreneur, we need to have a wide view on who will be participants in this all the voices of democracy, really. But the challenge is the business model, and when we were talking about tech, of course, the business model is in the reach, So you have to have reach, and reach, unfortunately, is owned by, then again, these huge American tech companies, and that's why we need to build business models and cater for our own reach, so to say.
Patrice.
So perhaps, can I stop a second to talk about Pluralis, because I didn't want to do a plug about Pluralis, but perhaps it might be useful for my answer to your question. So you've heard about, if I was sitting in your seat right now, I'm trying to think, okay, what could be useful? So two things. First of all, you heard about pooled funding, meaning that Civitatis is a group of European organization foundations that actually provide grants, if I'm not mistaken. Then you've got Media Forward Fund now for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, which is providing startup capital for growth. And then you've got something that our organization created. So let me explain very quickly. So the 325 million we've deployed over 20 years was basically in the countries with a history of media oppression. I repeat, from Guatemala to Indonesia to sub-Saharan Africa to Latin America. So those were the places. But what you might be interested to know is that, okay, Patrice, you've been doing this in the global south, basically, this model. But about 7 years ago, the foundations of the north, funding our work in the south, said, whoa, 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 something is happening here. Media capture is happening in Central and Eastern Europe. We know what happened in Hungary, metastasizing in Poland, and now metastasizing in other parts of Central and Eastern Europe. So what can you, MDIF, who's playing in the global south, do closer to home? And this is where we created this idea of a pool fund, like the other one, which is Pluralis. Pluralis is a $100 million euros, 1 million euro fund dedicated to prevent, as Kirsty explained very well, the capture of media in Central and Eastern Europe. A concrete example, Rzeczpospolita, the Wall Street Journal of Poland, was to be captured by the Kaczynski government with the help of Orlen, the state oil-owned company. MDIF using Pluralis, the pool of money, we are not 55 million, but we had the capital to go in and bid against Orlen, the state-owned oil company. Why would they buy the Wall Street Journal of Poland? I wonder why. But we went in and we used this capital to prevent the capture. So I just wanted to give you sort of a, now, to your question, can you come and apply to MDIF? So MDIF works in the global south, but I think what's more important, the one important thing is that you've understood our theory of change is childish. If you are financially independent, you will be editorially independent. If you are editorially independent, you will have impact on society. We measure our work across this theory of change. We have an impact dashboard. How do I make you more profitable? Is that true that I'm making you more healthier? You, the independent voice chosen by our board. Second, do you have a role on your society? What is the impact? We have very specific things. So that is, in a way, the answer is that for us, you'd have to be a little bit more down the road in terms of the possibility of being profitable. Does other forms of media and public interest information need help? Absolutely. Do they need grants? Absolutely. But MDIF really is focused on that part of the market in all the countries I've just stated where there's a possibility for you to be. Now, the one last thing I would like, and I'm sorry, Paul, if I were sitting in your seat, it's true, I came up with the title of the mission, and then Paul, as always, a brilliant moderator, is bringing it somewhere I don't know, but it's actually interesting. What I'd like you to leave with is that you have a a foundation which owns a large commercial but high quality group. You have a bank interested in press freedom because of the vision, this is my moment of being flattering, the vision of Maribel. And then you have financial institutions in Germany who's saying, hey, this is important for the public debate. I think this, for me, if I was sitting here, I say, wow, it means that some forces of society are responding to the challenge now. It's not just about philanthropy. I upset some people because I wrote an article called The Third Way, meaning not government and not the market, but right in the middle, which is what MDIF has been doing. And I wrote as a byline, which got me in trouble, that philanthropy cannot be the savior. It can be the catalyst. And I think philanthropy probably, look at and it's not about pluralis or us. What's more interesting is that you should know, sitting in your seat, that other forces of society, which I applaud, I commend, because it's easy for MDIF to say, or easy for Tinius Trust to say independent media is important, but I really commend the effort of other parts of society. I'm sorry, that was a bit my sacerdoce.
I just want to add one of my favorite anecdotes when it comes to Poland and Rzeczpospolita, because Orlen, the oil company that Patrice mentioned, they've already captured the local media of Poland. And the paradox here is that the Norwegian Oil Fund, which is quite huge, a little bit less so because of the last days, but still extremely huge, they own part of Orlen. So there you have it, that the state has invested in an oil company that is trying to capture the media in Poland by we, as a private trust, we try to save them. So there you go.
I have to say something. Kirsty went to them and said, hey, do you know that you're invested in something that's trying to capture media in Europe? And privately, she can tell you the effect it had, and it was very positive. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, there are always some nice guys in capitalism. Good to know. Allianz.
Well, I cannot speak for the company, but I think what I can say is that if you ask, like, why does a financial institution have a foundation that works on these topics? Patrice wrote it in his article. The free flow of information and an informed public is essential also for a functioning economy. This is very basic, but it's nevertheless true, and I think also true for our founder. And then on another level, I guess if you have a founder whose core business is risk, as an insurance company, it actually makes sense to have a foundation that addresses the societal risks that we are facing.
I think that's a great answer because, of course, the greatest risk of the world is democracy going down the drain and people like Trump taking over. And look at the effect on the stock exchange. So it's a very rational policy you are following. But let me challenge you on this concept of need to have a business model, need to be profitable. We know since the Second World War that democracy needs journalism, which is independent, and that's why in Europe we pump 27 billion euros a year of public money, state money, into media. Because with or without business model, we need this journalism. So let me ask you, we know journalism is going down the drain. Some privately financed journalism and publicly financed journalism is also incredibly under pressure politically. So someone comes to you and says, here is my great idea how to do public interest journalism for democracy. I can bring you reach, but I don't have a business model to make money. So, what is your attitude on this? Do you say, this is a great idea for democracy, we'll do it, here you have the first 3 million? Or are you going to say, where's your business model? When will you be profitable? Without profit, no media for democracy. Kirsty, you start.
Exactly. I think the name of the... Yeah, but I don't think you should clap for that. There is someone.
It's just a question they're clapping
Yeah,
for. Your answer they will clap for or not.
No, because there is some kind of a morality in your question that I am very uncertain. That is something to clap for. But let me answer. Tinius, the guy that was behind this trust, he was an heir to Schibsted Media Group and put his shares into this trust before he went to final rest. And his message was that a newspaper who cannot pay its own bills is not a free press. And I hold that for a true. I think also that it's not impossible to be profitable, but I think it's challenging. And I think that huge part of the media business has been lazy and has been not so adaptable when it comes to the new circumstances for making content and journalistic content, and that's a pity. Many have sort of hoped for the good old times to come back, and let opportunities pass before them. So I think the best way to be a free press that is also much more trusted press is to be able to pay your own bills. You don't need to call it a business model if you think that is provocative, but I think you want someone to pay your salary, I think you want to be able to turn somewhere else than to the state that more and more media look for to get the salary paid. That is a tricky angle, I think.
On my left, any ideas?
I'm a heavy supporter of public broadcasters, I really am. But it's also clear that Channel 1, Channel 3, and Channel 4 of the public broadcaster are not media pluralism. They have different offers or are catering different audiences. But what you need to have media pluralism, and to mention last time pluralis, this is also why the name is pluralis, because it's all about media pluralism and have a variety of choices and not also only the leftist, only the center, only the whatever. So it's the fact-based journalism in all its varieties is the thing. You need a functioning market. And it's also true that in these last 50, 30 years, media have been a good business. So before all these advertising went to the big tech and before readers, audiences became used to the fact that information is for free, however it's put together and whoever researched it, if you call it research, you had also subscribers, and you did not even need membership models because it was normal that you pay for the daily newspaper or something like that. So we are now at a point where we have to find, as it was said already, what are the new ways of having profit in producing news, be it verticals, how newsletters are now called, I learned, be it whatever it is, the podcast, the read news by journalists, so many innovative models out there, but it has to find a target group, and the target group has to value it. And I think this is absolutely possible, to be honest. And may I, because I wanted to add something what Katharina said before, also about this point on why are there capitalists out there who invest in this kind of topic. So Allianz is an insurance company, a bank is a bank, a savings bank, and nevertheless. The funny thing was that Patrice and I were some weeks ago on another panel in Frankfurt, and this was before.
You had a nice moderator.
And we this was before the tariff madness. I mean, it was already after the inauguration of Trump, etc. And I dare to say in this banking town that it's also in the interest of a bank, for example, that there is rule of law, because if you give out mortgages, you want them to be paid back sometime, and if they don't pay back, then you want to get it somehow. You need this basis of you make better profits, probably. I'm not a banker, honestly, but if you are in a safe rule of law environment. And I remember that at that time, our colleague on the panel said, "Nah, but look now, who was at the inauguration of Trump? All these Bezos and so there are entrepreneurs or big tech people or people in the business industry who don't care about rule of law, etc." And I have to say now, are they pissed or are they not pissed now? So I think there is a reason why also companies have to have an interest in fact-based information and, democracy in the end.
Okay, all ads go to big tech. 80% of the online advertisement goes to 2 companies in the world. It's the same in the US and Europe, Facebook or Meta and Google Alphabet. Would it help you in your function as media entrepreneurs and also as funders. If there would be a law which says from now on it is forbidden to do complete profiling of people with 1,000 or 2,000 parameters, profiling of the personality in toto. I think it's not unlikely that such a law could come about one day, because there is no freedom if private corporations or the state knows everything about each one of us. So if they wouldn't have these all-encompassing personality profiles, if that would be forbidden, would that be good for your activities, both as, let's say, commercial media or as funders of profit-oriented media, which therefore has to, at least in part, probably be based on advertisement? Would it bring back parts of the business model you knew from before? Or would you say, we don't need that and we don't care? Patrice.
I'm a bit offended because you didn't let me answer your past question on the business model, and if I may, I would like to do this. You destructure, I'll destructure. I think on the business model and the clapping, I feel the urge of telling you this, but this is the moment where I make friends. I started my career as a war reporter 30 years ago. I was one of the first Reporters Sans Frontières of going in Afghanistan when the Russians were there. And Reporters Sans Frontières at the time could not finance me. I found the money, I got it, sold my articles, paid it back. I remember a friend of mine who was looking after Pol Pot, was trying for 4 times. He couldn't find him, and he finally found them 35 years ago. Nobody wanted to fund it. He found the money, he went over, got it, got ABC. He got screwed by ABC because ABC took the pictures and published on TV before, but he was an entrepreneur with it. What I'm trying to tell you is that this idea that journalists are not entrepreneurs, I keep hearing this, yes, but it's somebody else's problem. There's a lot of women and men around the world saying, this is my problem. And guess, fast forward to 2025, we meet people in the content creation world. People, La Presse in Canada, a legacy media, used an influencer to explain the right to die. They decided that they had found this content creator, not a journalist. He had 500,000 followers. He was having a public discourse with them and so forth. And they used him. He's profitable. Why? He's alone. I think there are people in the content creation world, just like 30 years ago, journalists were that. So I think that's the idea that Kirsty was saying about self-sustainability should not be in the hands of only business people. This is why I love this organization, because we're both. We're both. It's about self-sustainability of one of the most important things in terms of information, which is the information that allows democracy to thrive. So I feel 25, 30 years later, I have to, please, young people in the room, don't be discouraged, about this idea of business model. You don't have to work in a building with high, glass buildings and have a beautiful office and so forth to be able to provide public interest information. And here's a little secret. The young people who are doing it in the bucket of content creator, there's not only Joe Rogan and Kim Kardashian in that bucket. There are a lot of people who are doing things that are really interesting without a journalism card, and they are not waiting for us. I have an anecdote of a funder who went to some of them, and some of them told them, no, we don't need money. Oh, I'm profitable. We're doing rightly good stuff as content creator. No, but I'd love you to fund me my next project. This is happening around us in terms of public interest information. I'm sorry. Now, on your question of regulation, I have no idea.
Maybe I can jump in there. I'm not sure it would solve any of our problems as a foundation because, like I said, we fund NGOs. We don't fund or invest commercial or entrepreneurial entities. But what would help us is if journalism became an official part of the German tax code, because as of now we can fund journalistic endeavors, But for instance, we can't provide core or institutional funding. It always has to be project funding. If journalism was included in the German tax code as, you know, a definition of what NGOs like us can fund for the public benefit, then that would make it a lot easier for us to also potentially provide more core funding. And that would be something that would be really helpful. I've just been told that the new coalition in Germany seems to have put it into the coalition treaty, but now they have to act on it too.
Okay, I think this is great for a last round. What are your demands on the legislator, on politics, to make your willingness to support democracy more effective, more viable, provide you more opportunities to do good things for democracy? And second question, okay, we have understood we want a mixed journalism. We have friends of public funding of TV. We have friends of private business model. Maybe the best model is a mixed model. So if the mixed model is the best, question to all of you, are there ways or should there be ways how you can invest or work alongside in the same project with public funding? Let's say in Italy, for example, there is press funding for printed press. Is this interesting for you to talk about also, you know, developing models of co-investment with public government funds, of course, which have to be at arm's length, not influencing the target and so on? Two questions for a last round to all of you. Maybe, Kirsti, you start again.
I want to do like Patrice and answer the last question, actually. Start for that, because to me, I think we should start by taxing the huge tech companies. And if you ask for privacy laws, I think you need to take into consideration what I started with, that people today are grown up with content that is something that suits me, that is relevant to me, and they want personalization. And if we, as media companies, can't offer that, we become irrelevant to them, and thus both boring and not trustworthy. So that's a dilemma. I think I'm not so sure whether the answer or there is any luck into very strong privacy laws. I guess we already do things with the public money when it comes to investing, because there are streams of public money into media, lots of places, and I think the Norwegian government that I know best, and they are very professional when it comes to media support by arm's length. So that's not a problem. But I think I would like to add also, since we're wrapping it up, I think we need to not think of democracy as something that is given and the others are not. Democracy is have to be able to respond to people's expectations and hopes, and that's why we need really media plurality, as Maribel says, that there need to be lots of media. There has to be sufficient media, so to have the power to account, and that is that I think is why we see that democracies are shivering these days.
So I go back to the next question. So blended, should public money be involved? I think one of the lessons MDIF learned over 30 years is, and I think you say a mixed model, we like to call it the third way. It cannot just be public, because aside from the BBC, we see that it's very difficult to have no strings attached to that in most parts of the world if the money is coming from the government. And then we now know that the market has been completely disrupted by the ability to advertise and subscription, and even content creation has been completely disrupted by the tech. So the idea perhaps is a third way. I'm sorry to plug my idea, but I think I answer your question. Now, in the third way, our vision at MDIF is that the future will be concessional investment. You cannot make 20 or 30% EBITDA anymore everywhere with public interest information, which was the case, I repeat, since 200 years. So it will be concessional. And one of the things we learned at MDIF over 30 years is what we simply do. We go to foundations, and they say, I want to give you a grant. We go to impact investor, and they say, I only want 2% return on investment. And we go to sometimes investors that say, I want 5%. So a full grant, 2% and 5%. But as an NGO, one of the things I found fascinating immediately when I met MDIF 22 years ago is that let's learn from the finance industry. If you're when we did the private equity fund the first time, we as a journalist, we went and we interviewed. So how do you do this? Oh, you do this? Really? Finance people? Well, we can't do this because we're a mission-driven. We're not an investment fund, we're a solution. However, as my favorite author, Arthur Koestler, used to say, to refuse to sit with the devil is not a sign of purity, it's a lack of self-confidence. Sit down with the finance people. Oh, you do this, which means that in this mixture, they do this mixture all the time. They do, oh, well, a foundation will de-risk, thank you, Alliance, will de-risk the funding for other people and so forth. So I think sitting down there, there's a possibility of a third way to appear. Now, I repeat, there's a lot of part of the public interest information in the world will continue to be needed grants. MDIF is not the solution to everything. We are not. But there is a part of it which can be done. Now, on the public funding, let me leave you with a little hope. Right now, there are conversations about the next multi-financial framework of the European Union. It's 1.3 trillion, 1.2 trillion euros. It's about infrastructure. And MDIF, to its investment model in Pluralis, has managed to get their ear to say, perhaps in 2025, in the world of Elon Musk, perhaps public interest information is an infrastructure and should be in the law for 1.3 billion. I have no idea how to do that, 1.3 trillion. I don't know, we don't know how to do this, but I think this is the conversation that needs to happen in terms of public funding. How to do it, no idea.
I admire always the global view of Patrice and an organization like MDIF. So it's, I bring it back to Austria now because this is where I know what is happening. And actually, public funding is really toxic there. I have to say it. It's one of the reasons why the industry is so down, because it was big, broad, and most of the legacy media, especially, they get so used to it that they did not really invest in innovation in a way. And young media very often don't get any public funding because they don't have 4 times a year a print thing, or there are obligations that are really weird. And I do not mention now advertising, because the public advertising is a chapter on its own. It created even a new word, Inseratenkorruption, so advertisement corruption, which is it's in the courts. So there are bad examples of using public money, and what, for example, the Media Forward Fund tries now is to show how arm's length could work, and they want to invite also, or we want to invite there also public money if it works. So being short.
Yeah, speaking for the German situation, I wonder if the issue you're addressing isn't really solving itself right now, because public funding is being cut everywhere. I think there's a chance in it, but you mentioned strings attached earlier. If there is funding that comes with strings attached, it's public funding. That's one of the big challenges there. From our point of view, what's important is an ecosystem where you have sustainable business models in journalism and media, but where you also have journalists and initiatives that are not-for-profit, that may not have a business model, but are also contributing essentially to the ecosystem, like Correctiv Europe, whom we're working with, for instance. Yeah, so it's about the ecosystem.
All right, great. Thank you very much. We heard a lot of demands on policy making, more money from the European Union in the next financial period for democracy, taxation of big tech, include journalism as a public interest activity, look out for the ecosystem, also if there's no business model, at the same time challenge that those who start or run a media business can pay their own bills. Thank you very much for the discussion. I hope there was something in it for you, and it gave you a little bit of guidance if you yourself think about looking for funding to support your venture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.